Hi grade 9s, it's Miss Thangaraj here, and today we're going to do a math assignment where we look at the fuel consumption of different vehicles, and we're going to graph the fuel consumption of different vehicles. And fuel consumption just means how much gas does a car need to drive. So before we start, please make sure you get a pencil and a piece of paper so that while you are watching this video, you can do math along with me. That's going to help you a lot. You probably also want a calculator, so why don't you stop and go get those things now. We're going to look at assignment 4, lesson 4. It's called an environmental project. And the reason it's called an environmental project is because if your car uses a lot of gas, it's not very good for the environment. So what we want to do is we want to compare the distance that the vehicles can travel on a full tank of gasoline. And we're going to look at an SUV and we're going to look at a minivan and see which vehicle uses less gas. So first we're going to make a table for an SUV. We're going to make a table where we're comparing distance driven in kilometers and the amount of gas the car uses and how much is left in the gas tank. And then we're going to do the same thing for a minivan where we're going to compare the distance driven and how much gas is still in the tank. And in order to do that, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to use the equation or the algebraic model for each. So here we have the SUV, and an SUV, the equation is G is equal to 80 minus 0.20D. That means our gas tank started with 80 liters and it goes down 0.20 every distance. And for a minivan, the equation is C equals 65. That means you start with 65 liters and it goes down 0.15 every distance. You can hear that my dog is barking in the background, so I'm going to stop filming right now, help my dog, and then I'll come back to you. So in this video together, we're going to make the table of values for the SUV. And I think that if we're doing it together, it's important that you have a pencil and a paper and a calculator so you can do it together with me. So I'm going to get my paper and pencil and calculator so that I can draw on my chart paper on my table, and hopefully you'll do the same thing with me now. Okay, so here's my equation, and I'm going to make the table of values to go with that equation. I want you to notice that the initial value, if I look at the equation, I can find the initial value. We know we have two parts. We have the rate of change, which is next to the variable or the D, and the part that's all by itself, that is the initial value. So we know that at the beginning, the SUV had 80 liters of gas inside the fuel tank. Now we want to find the answer for 100 after 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, and 400 kilometers. So we have to use the equation, and you have to remember that this 100, it's a D. So that means over here in my equation, I'm going to cross off the D and I'm going to put a 100 there. So that means 80 minus 0.20 times 100. And if I do that, that's going to give me 20, I think. Yes. Sorry, I'm doing math in my head. I should know that. 80 minus 0.20 times 100 gives you 80 minus 20, which gives you 60. So that means after 100 kilometers, we have 60 liters of gas. Now we need to do the same thing for the 200. I'm going to take the 200. Notice, again, the letter that's above it is a D, so I'm going to you always write down the exact same equation. So where we see the D, I'm going to cross off the D and put 200, and I'm going to get G is equal to 80 minus 0.2 times 200, which is going to give me G is equal to 80 minus 40, so my answer is 40. Now, there are two things we can do. We can continue using the equation for the rest of the table, or I can start looking for patterns. I see that right now it's dropping by 20 each time. So 80 minus 20 is 60. 60 minus 20 is 40. 40 minus 20 would be 20. 20 minus 20 would give you 0. That's the pattern. It's linear. There needs to be a pattern. So now I am done my table of values. And I use my equation and I use patterns. So now let's look at Desmos and let's see, let's enter the equation into Desmos and let's see if we can get a beautiful graph for the SUV. So in Desmos, you can enter the math you need to do, or you can enter the final answers. It doesn't matter. But if you enter that table of values and then look at the graph, you're probably going to see nothing. So what you need to do in order to see the dots on the graph is you're going to need to zoom out. And how you zoom out is you go to the wrench, you click on the minus, you press it a few times to zoom out, and then you should be able to see your graph. And your graph is going to look like the green dots that we see here. So I want you to press pause now, and I would love for you to try that with Desmos right now. So hopefully you've tried to graph it on Desmos, and if you entered your table of values into Desmos, you probably just have these 5 dots on your screen for 0, 100, 200, 300, and 400, and you've done nothing wrong. My graph, however, looked like this, slightly different. There was a line going through it. The only reason that my graph had the line going through it is because I added the equation underneath the table of values in Desmos. And the reason I did that is because this question is a continuous question. When you're driving, you don't just drive 0 kilometers or 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers. You can drive 0.5 kilometers or 1.3 kilometers or 2.7 kilometers or 10.89 kilometers. The graph should continue all the time. It's different from a graph of people where you can only have 1 guest or 2 guests or 3 guests. That's when you have number of people, there are no decimals. You can't have a decimal person, but you can certainly have a decimal number of kilometers, and that's why this graph is continuous. Okay, your homework now. Your homework is now to make the graph for the minivan. So you're going to make a table of values for a minivan using the equation that we're given for the minivan. And it's not too much homework. It's actually today is only a little bit of homework, but I want you to try it yourself. That's your homework. You can send me your work so I can check it. If you have questions, I will be on Google Meet this afternoon between 1:30 and 3. You can ask me your questions then. And please leave me a comment in YouTube so I know you've watched my video. Please, I don't want you feeling overwhelmed. If you're a little bit behind on your work, that's okay. Any math you're doing at home is making me happy. So don't feel discouraged or overwhelmed because you're not quite up to date. Anything you're doing at home is making me happy. Okay? Have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow on YouTube.